Calling the meeting to order at 6:01. Ask if you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. First thing we are going to do is we have a public hearing prior to our official school board meeting. And the public hearing is to deal with the withdrawing from facilities repair fund and for maintenance costs. This is an opportunity for community members to weigh in on the use of funds for work that we are intent on doing. There is a sheet that is out in the audience if anybody wants a copy of some of the things that we're working on. Are there any public comments? Anybody have anything they would like to say to you now? No? Yeah. The amount is $51,740.97. So
that's coming out of the facilities repair.
Yep. Any public comments? Work on fixing up the building? Well, good stuff. All right, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. If you need a motion to accept the funds in the public hearing?
You will, yes.
You want to do it now?
You can do it later.
You can do it later.
Okay.
All right. So the meeting itself, we have a full agenda tonight. We're going to start with a non-public session. It could take I'm not sure exactly how long it's going to take, but what is going to happen is I'm going to make a motion to go into non-public, and then I'm going to ask for everyone who is not involved in the non-public session to leave the room. We invite you to come back. I really can't tell you exactly how long it's going to take, but we will if you want to stay in the hallway, you're welcome to do that, and we will let somebody come grab you as soon as we're done. So, as per NHRSA 91-A:32C, I would entertain a motion to go into non-public.
So moved.
Second. All right. We're going to do a roll call. Ken?
Yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
Jim? Yes. Zach?
Yes.
Yes. Nate? Yes. All right. So I'd ask if you are not involved with the non-public hearing, if you could please on to the minutes of December 19th.
I'd move the minutes as written. Second.
Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes of either December 19th or January 2nd?
I had one minor one.
I'm sorry, I only moved the 19th in that case. You want to move them both?
Yes.
I'd also move the minutes of January 2nd.
Second.
What is your correction, Nate?
Under the CIP line in,
Which
I don't even know. This is the new recent one.
January 2nd.
Yes. Under the CIP,
Page 2, Section H,
should say modulars, not modelers.
Okay.
item number
Minor
1.
detail. School expansion modulars.
Okay.
That was all I got.
Got it.
Anything else? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes as corrected?
Aye.
Aye.
Public comments.
At almost 8 o'clock.
I told you to take a nap, didn't I?
I drank it especially.
Okay. All right. No public comments. Agenda review. Any changes or reorganization of the agenda?
We do have a staff report at this meeting. It indicates that there isn't one, but there is.
Should we do the staff report earlier in the evening? So
I'm sure Ms. Davis would love that. And we also need to add somewhere the vote to withdraw funds from the trust.
correct. So why don't we do that under?
Want to do that right now? Because that'll take all of about 9 seconds.
Yeah. So we'll just add it right after now.
Under
and,
consent items. Is there a consent item?
We do have consent items, but where do we want to put teacher presentation? staff presentation?
And move that right under
right
the
after.
consent items.
Yeah.
Between C and D?
Between B and C.
Next.
Uh-huh.
Staff. Alright, so we're adding first vote on funds and second staff presentation. Anything else changing to the agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
To withdraw.
Go right ahead.
Move to withdraw $51,740.90 from the facilities improvement capital reserve fund.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, staff presentation.
Okay, cool. I have a slideshow, just so you have pictures, so I'm just gonna put them over there, but also just, that way you can read things and I don't have to say them. So I was thinking of, I'm Melissa Davis, I'm one of the two music teachers, and I was thinking of presenting about the recorder unit, which is a really cool unit in 3rd grade where kids start to move independently into the literacy part of music and work at their own speed, and it's really engaging. But this one is sort of current event-y, so it's very like on topic. World music drumming is a curriculum that is implemented a little bit in 4th, a little bit in 5th, more 6, 7, 8. And so it's been something that I've done with kids as classes, as a club. And now we have an artist in residence coming and it's super exciting. And so the artist in residence that's coming will be here for a week in February, the week before February break, and he'll get to work with all the kids in the school. And it's almost like he was a consultant for the World Music Drumming curriculum when they get to pieces from Africa. He's from Ghana, and so a lot of his expertise was used. So the curriculum actually covers like a lot of different places, Latin America, Cuba, lots of diverse places, not just Africa or just Ghana. But our artist in residence is an expert in that area, and so he's coming and he'll be obviously doing his expertise. So the drumming part, it's really cool to watch kids engage in this curriculum because it does more than just enable them to make music in a different way. It also allows them to be better people to each other. The way that music works in Ghana is that it's something that everybody does, and it's not a hobby or an elective, kind of like how it is in the States. So as a first world country, I think a lot of times our culture, like if we wanted to hang out, we would grab drinks or apps or go spend our money and have fun together. That would be like one way that we do that, and it's really common in America. In Ghana, it's common to belong to a drum club or a drum group. So like this is a adenkun board, and like a lot of the sports teams have an adenkun song. So like they play this squash. So that's just how like music is just immersed everywhere there. So like people that over here were like, oh, you're such a great drummer. In their culture, their country, they're like, what are you talking about? I'm a math teacher. You know, so it's a different social setting. That being said, so this is one piece that's like put into music class, and so it's different for our kids, but it's a time for them to connect socially, connect with their community, support each other, belong, and also engage in music in ways that's more physical and more visual than traditional reading music off a page, where I'm relying on my own ability to be literate and relying on my own independent thought process. This is a very much copy, do what I do. Oh, and the other part is like psychologically, some people, like if you go really, there's some people that are really hippy-dippy into this, and they say that it's also like biologically very grounding, because the first thing you ever heard was a heartbeat, and the first thing that ever made you human through that sense was a steady beat. And so, you know, how important is that, and how primal, yeah, etc. So, this is an 8th grader. And she'll tell you also why it's important to her, I think.
Drumming important.
I think drumming is really important because it's a different way to experience and learn about music. And instead of just sitting in social studies class and learning like what other cultures would do, we get to experience it and actually like do what they would do and learn songs like they would and learn about the culture in a new experiencing hands-on way.
So she was an 8th grader. She's a junior in high school. Sorry. Just didn't want you to think like you missed out on that. And then, so it also, the physiological effects and the psychological effects, it's like old school, they used to say like right brain, left brain, but that's not real according to science, so I'm not going to go there. But it is a way to engage kids where there is a high accountability for accuracy, and there is a right and wrong, but then it's also expressive, and it's also artful, and there are choices and creative elements. So it's one of those kind of walks the fine line of using both parts of your brain, and it gives them ownership, which is what it's all about, having that sort of autonomous skill building on their own. I'll show you this one, that's the last one of them. So, maybe I won't. I was on the fence about it anyways. So, it is a collaborative, moving to the next one, collaborative, really exciting experience for all the kids. That's SOA with a group when I brought him for Pittsfield. And his style of teaching also requires quite a bit of focus. And he'll probably say that word like 700 times when he's here. And it's a style of teaching that I really appreciate. I don't think a lot of music teachers or a lot of teachers in general teach in this style, but the whole concept of going slow to go fast, you have to focus, and like really waiting to get that focus is a transferable skill. And so a lot of teachers at schools, once he comes, are like, you have to come in September because it'll set us up for success, or you have to come every year, all that kind of thing. And he's also just got a really cool way of teaching that's just different from a lot of people that I've studied with. So I'm really excited. We'll have a sharing on Thursday night for people to come. Check it out. It's like a concert, but we're calling it a sharing because he'll be here a week. And you're going to be blown away because in a week they're going to be like playing their like brains out and singing, and they're singing, dancing, playing, drumming, boards, xylophones. It's very, very cool. And there's other people that like already bought in. Let's find that. So all these other people are like really, really jazzed about it too, even financially jazzed. So I wanted to keep it kind of quicker because it's like I've been here for a while.
No, we're going to be here for a long time.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions? Or
Cool. All right.
that's it.
Awesome. Thank you. Consent items. Any?
No.
2018-19 school district officers and
Do
committee
you want to do the
chairs.
withdrawing of the funds?
It's already done.
Who
are you?
Good luck with me for the next 2 hours.
We need a coffee for Patty.
Yeah, that was right after agenda review.
Yep.
All right. School district officers and chairs. I think this was just for reference because we were a little confused last time, correct?
Yeah, and you were talking about whether or not all of you were going to revisit Shelley's.
Great.
Duties. I think you filled them in before Leslie was here.
So Leslie is already on the technology liaison,
You have lost. I know.
and Leslie is on the building committee. And then Concord School Board reps. That's the one I was thinking about, not the alternative high school options.
Oh,
Did you want to pick anything else up, Leslie?
You can have a budget if you'd like a budget. The painful part's done, but you're more than welcome to.
I guess I'd need more information about what some of these are and when.
So like things that Shelley was doing, the selectman's representative is the liaison from our board who would officially go to the selectmen's meeting and talk to them about what the school's doing and discuss with them about collaboration between the town and the school, which is the same thing. Let's see where else we had. Manifest review is just coming in once a week to sign the manifest.
Okay.
And review it.
And review
And
it.
review it.
Correct.
Oh, okay, I see, hold on.
Sick bank is a very straightforward thing where you, teachers can bank extra hours that can be drawn off of in case somebody gets really ill, but there's a process for pulling
Common
time
pool.
out.
Mm-hmm.
It only meets maybe once a year or twice a year.
Depends on-
Yeah,
up-
maybe
upon
sometimes,
request.
yeah, sometimes,
Manifest review. Did somebody already take alternative high school options?
Well, that's Nate right now, but
Doesn't need to be.
doesn't need to be.
Oh, okay.
You will have to do this over again in a
Couple
couple of
months.
months.
No.
So,
Okay, so then
do you want to leave it alone at this
we
point,
can
or?
leave it alone at this point, and if anybody needs help, obviously, you know.
Can I ask a question about one?
Sure.
Maybe my question's on clarifying the job description of public relations. And this is late in the year to be asking this question, but it seems like as we go into town meeting time, essentially my role on Facebook, I've been posting brief reports, but those reports in the form of Facebook lead to questions. And so my question is, in terms of a job description, am I there to respond to questions, or am I there to just not respond? Should I respond just with like facts, like numbers, but not with perspectives or opinions? I don't know I don't know. The Facebook animal is sort of a new thing, the social media thing. So could I get clarification
If
as
you're answering questions about the board, then you're acting as a representative of the board. So that would be just, you would need to acknowledge that, designate that. It can be
I
a
think
slippery slope.
can be sticky?
Yeah.
I like what you've been putting out.
Okay.
I would almost just put it out and turn off the comments so that it's just outgoing and there is nothing
Right.
bound below it. And that's how I would approach it. We are disseminating, we are pushing information out,
Okay.
and there's proper channels to request additional information back.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Is that enough clarity for you?
Great, thank you. Yep.
All right. All right. So we will move on from that to bus routes committee.
I did speak to, or emailed Kelly at Dale, and she said she would be happy to be part of your committee.
I have another volunteer. Her name is Tina St. Peter.
And you do need to officially form the committee too.
I move that we form a bus routes committee.
How do we want it structured?
Yeah, we would need to come up with a mission.
I think isn't the start to create the motion to create it, and then we have the discussion about what it's gonna be, but
Yeah, okay, somebody want to second it?
Second.
Boom. Discussion. So we have a committee. What does your committee look like and what is it for?
my committee, well, hold on.
You made the motion.
The committee, I think if it has I think this is one of those ones, a couple of board members, no more than two, obviously. Some members of the administration, one or two, Kelly, and then if Ms. St. Peter has been volunteering, then I would incorporate her. I don't think it needs to be a big committee. I don't think it's beneficial to make them huge. I think if we just keep it all to the pertinent parties that are really familiar with how it all works, we'll get more done.
So one community member, one representative from Dale, two board members, is what I heard, right?
And somebody from the administration.
Somebody from the
Somebody
administration.
from the administration. Do we want somebody who has technical knowledge to analyze the routes themselves?
As in a second member of the community, or?
Right, or a technical liaison?
I'm fine with that.
And what is the charge of the committee?
Look at ways to improve our routing to even out the loading on our buses so that we are operating more efficiently. Currently, we are not.
Okay. And anybody want to add anything else to that?
By no means am I volunteering, by the way, I'm just,
I see that.
Anybody?
Would that include, in terms of routing and things like that, would that include bus stops as well?
Right.
Like
It'd be
all that
routes and stops and
stops and everything.
all that accompanies the getting the kids here.
Does this committee, I don't think if this was part of your question, does this committee then get the information of students' addresses? And is that private information, and how does that work?
Are we able to allow that, or what is the protocol for that? Can't. We could just be given blind addresses.
I guess it depends on who's on the committee, because if a board member is working on something and they have a legitimate educational interest, then they would have access to that information. Obviously, administration has access. Somebody from the bus company has all the access. So it just, if you had someone else on the committee that wouldn't be privy to that, they wouldn't be able to work on that part of it. You could talk in general terms about, okay, these are all the colors and these are the roads they travel on, and talk about moving them and clustering, but you wouldn't give
I
them
think without being able
names
to
and
look at
addresses.
current addresses, there's no way to affect change. So I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that you need to look at that.
So keep the committee,
So the committees
two
be
people who would have access to
internal.
that information.
So no
That
community
is
members
easier.
then?
That eliminates community members. I mean, this seems like an animal that Mr. Dealey's been trying to really.
You could.
I started on it.
You can certainly, depending on what your end goal is, you could start the committee with just looking at the map of all of our routes, because that's all public information, and where the buses stop is public information, and you could talk through what you want to try plotting, and then the people with access to that information can go and do that.
You could very readily look at the buses that are traveling with a heavier load on them and look at the buses that
Yeah,
have
you
a
have
less.
the ridership numbers, you have the routes that they travel now.
So I mean, there is ways to potentially look at that outside of directly correlating it to.
You'd have to do density. Somebody on the committee
Would have to
would have to
Yeah.
filter. Would have to be the filter, and you'd be looking at creating some sort of density type data, saying on this road we pick up, or in this stretch of road we pick up this many, or at this cluster stop we pick up this many students.
Bounce it
We
from
could-
intersection to
we could-
intersection.
So I mean, it's going to be
Do
gray
we wanna retain
because
somebody to do that. Do we want to offer a retainer for somebody for professional
Yeah, this one.
services? If they were contracted by the SAU to study that, they would be privy to that information.
but there would be legal binders in that contract for security
Right.
reasons.
If you hire someone to perform a service and they need access to the information, they can.
Right.
So if somebody was going to do it for, say, $100 or $50 or $5,
They would have to conform to those
Right.
legal requirements.
so
Sign a contract and all that.
we could create that situation where they were legally bound to.
Are our certified volunteers held to all that? Do they acknowledge?
Volunteers, yes, if they're in the school, they are bound by, everyone is bound by the Family Education Rights to Privacy Act.
Our certified volunteers are as well.
Yes,
So our certified volunteers theoretically could have access to that.
we wouldn't have occasion to give a volunteer. in
No,
the
but if
school
a
that
volunteer was working with that,
I would check into that, I would just wanna make sure.
How about, and just in particular, if someone was a paraprofessional who was employed by the school, would they be eligible to work with that data as well?
They would not have, typically in their role, they would not have
Right,
access to
unless
that.
there was some sort of a redefined
Mhm.
scope or something. All right, so we got to work. So I think we have a motion and we have some details that need to get worked out in terms of legal. So right now we are, and we can redefine this, but we have 2 community members, 2 board members, an administration participant, and a technical liaison. Is that what you were talking about?
Administration,
and a-
2 board,
And a bus company.
2 reps from Dale,
Right.
and a technical liaison at this.
Okay. Is everybody said?
One community member?
Well, I think if are you talking about Tina for the community member? Because
Yeah, because she's also staff.
an employee at
Exactly.
Dale, right?
And an employee at the school.
No, she's
You're not a para?
she's a bus driver, so she works at Dale and night.
Custodian?
You're here all the time.
Right.
You're the volunteer coordinator.
I wanna make sure we're,
Okay.
I'll make sure that we're okay.
Okay.
And then you want to just report back to
Yeah, yeah.
So everyone in favor of that in terms of the number of participants and
verifying though.
and the scope of what we're taking on?
Aye.
Aye. It's for you. Bus routes committee. Space needs committee presentation.
You want to take a 10-minute break for pizza?
Is pizza here? I would entertain a motion to
So moved.
take a 10-minute.
Second.
8:05, we're taking a pizza.
I will get
Aye.
some plates.
We have had dinner and we are back in meeting here. We're all set. All right. We are now on the Space Needs Committee presentation, which is getting set up.
It just takes a few minutes. Warms up. That's fine.
Ken, Leslie, you're on whenever you want to.
You may have that.
Yawning already, Zach?
A long day.
Long day.
A long day.
Here, if I can get cycled as well.
Oh, there were copies.
Yeah.
There's only one.
Do we want to kill lights to make that?
Can everybody see?
Oh, it'll. Yeah. It's going. It's slow. I remember it being slow from last week. There we go. So for the past couple months, I think from midsummer, we have been pulling together the data, additional data from what we originally received in the demographic study from 2017. And before I go any further, I do want to say thank you very much to the committee members, Leslie, Andy Riordan, Tom Goodridge, Stefan Yakovitz, Amy Filipowicz, and Leila Thompson, who all contributed at one point or another. And what this presentation is the initial findings going through. So this is your first look, and feel free afterwards, we can have a discussion if you need additional data or questions, and then we'll put it out further after that. So the mission statement for the committee, we had 3 parts. The first was to create a reusable framework for gathering and analyzing current and historic data. We've done that. We've actually created 2 models, and I'll go into more details about what those are as we get further into the presentation. But population versus building permits and building permits versus enrollment. Second mission statement was to develop and document a repeatable process for updating the collected data. Ties in with the first one. We have developed a process and we need to write it down. So we do want to make the recommendation that the administration follow up with this. You're going to just have to plug in yearly information and summarize it, make some minor adjustments, and you can summarize it. Perhaps at the deliberative session might be a good idea to say, hey, this is where we're at for right now. And then the third piece, I think, Nate, you had brought this up, was to use the results of the updated analysis to present and compare the options and impacts in order to recommend a suitable course of action. That'll be at the very end when we talk about that, because there's many elements to that. But in the short term, we think we've accomplished this. We're using the Department of Education square foot recommendations, current recommendation. We can define our needs at our current enrollment levels and compare to our existing physical plan. What our physical building looks like now in that light. Longer term, I think we can use this as a planning tool. It's a place to track historical data, check the accuracy of our projections as we go on. The more data we have, the better that model is going to be. And also track trends ahead of time. I think that's where a lot of people or a lot of towns have gotten caught up, is not being able to spot those trends with sufficient time to be able to react to them. And that was really the main drive for this committee, was to make sure that we were not going to have a shortfall in the future, end up proposing an expansion or whatever and then have a shortfall. Didn't want that to happen. What we use for data sources.
Hold on for a second.
Sorry, quick question. Is this going to be made available on our website? Because it's not showing up on this very well. So can this be made available?
It will be made available, yeah.
Thank you.
There will be some other further documentation that we'll need to add in this, after this. Like I said, this is the initial look. And if you have any other further questions, but the whole thing will be definitely made available. We pulled a lot of data from the New Hampshire Office of Strategic Initiatives, the Department of Education. We did use demographic studies from the towns of Fremont and Candia. We also tried to incorporate things from the Deerfield Master Plan, the existing Deerfield Master Plan, and I know that that's coming under revision, and also used the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission as a resource. All right, so real quickly, we're going to talk about the past, so we have a frame of reference as we go forward. This letter from the Department of Education was written in 2010, and it basically goes over, at that point, they had made some recommendations, but they also pointed out the fact that we were already in modulars, we were out of space at that point. This is a timeline of some of those changes. 1989, DCS this building was constructed at an original square footage of 58,000 square feet, which was the equivalent at the time of 536 students at the levels at that time. 98, we added space for the kindergarten. 99, we added over 8,600 square feet for additional space. And of course, in 2010, the Department of Education square footage recommendations updated to 140 square foot per pupil, which dropped us from 536 students to 450 students as a design capacity. So you can see how those recommendations chip away at what we're doing. And that's what these graphs basically show, is we went back to 2006 because that's where we had the most data, so basically 12 years of data. The solid straight line is the design capacity, the Department of Education recommendations. The yellow line on top is the reported enrollment, and the green line on the graph on the left is the average daily attendance. The graph on the right looks at it slightly different. It's a square footage per student versus the DOE recommendation. So that solid straightish line is the DOE, and the yellow line is the actual square footage per reported enrollment. You'll see that the average daily attendance does stop in 2017 because we haven't got 2018 yet. So that's why it's one short. But I will actually point out at this point, in reported enrollment uses the numbers reported to the state as of October 1st of each year. So we had to be consistent that way. So that's why we have that this year, and then we'll get later on the reported daily attendance. Any
So
questions?
Yeah, so there've been two major reassessments in terms of the
Footage needs.
design capacity.
That we were able to
DOE?
find, yes.
Okay.
Did it go, even more of a curve over time? Maybe, but that we could find written evidence that we're able to cite from the Department of Education.
Okay.
It did, we put it in the two timelines.
Okay, thanks.
Currently, actually, can you step back?
Oh.
Sorry, yeah, no, that's all right. I just want to point out, currently the Department of Education recommendation is 178 square feet per student.
We're 129.
We're at 129.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that including the modulars?
I don't believe so.
I don't believe so.
They assume that we wouldn't have those
So-
recommendations.
So obviously, a question that will arise is the square footage of the modulars. How does that impact those equations?
They will have some
Um,
impact, but probably not a lot. They're not going to bring us anywhere close to that.
So this slide, just going back real quick to this slide, the second part of the letter also makes recommendations clearly indicating that modulars just are a clear indication of space shortage, not necessarily factored into square footage for a school to properly be sized for student capacity.
If I could remind you guys that you're far away from the microphones and people will want to hear this, so keep the volume up.
It's probably,
There's one right here. Okay.
there you go. So one of the things that we looked at was enrollment versus population, to see if there was any correlation just from overall numbers. Statistically, it's almost non-existent. There's actually a very slightly negative correlation, which means they kind of separate as they move. Now, statistic correlation is, do things move together? It doesn't necessarily point out causality. It's not indicating one is the cause of the other, it's just that they move together in the same direction or not. So this graph will show reported enrollment versus estimated town population. The estimated town population being the orange line or reddish line, and the reported enrollment, the yellow line here. They do kind of move together. The enrollment is a bit of a lagging indicator. It moves a year or two behind population, but you'll see that if you were to look at, not that I suggest this, but you can see what we've been feeling recently, anecdotally. If you look at from 2012 to 2017, they do move together, and we are increasing.
And we're at 540 something now.
We're at 541, that's correct. And again, we left it at 2017 because we don't have population numbers for 2018 yet. All right. So this is enrollment versus building permits. And the reason why we looked at building permits was in other demographic studies in the towns of Fremont and Candia, and actually I believe Sylvia made note of it when she was here last. There is a very strong correlation between enrollment and building permits, which makes sense because the more new buildings you have, the more families can come in. It's a good indicator of your migration in. And you can see it follows right along pretty well, pretty tight. Again, the reddish is your total building permits, and the yellowish line is your reported enrollment. There is a fairly significant correlation. I think it's 0.6 ratio to these. So this is a very good indicator. So present. Again, going back to these graphs, you can see that we are. If you look at the left one, we are way over design capacity. If you look at the right one, we are way under the design square footage.
And just to point out the latest numbers, right now, based on Department of Education max capacity,
square footage per pupil, max capacity would be 393 pupils. And
100%.
we are at 90%, which is, or wait, is that 100%?
That's 100%.
That's 100%, and actually recommended utilization for the building is 90%. And we are currently at enrollment of 541.
Any questions so far?
Even taking the students that are in the modulators and separating them into their own subgroup, we're still 100 over, 25% over.
Yeah.
Max.
Yeah. Which nobody should be shocked at, because they're out there.
Right.
So, okay. All right, so there are some other requirements. I mean, we've just been looking at the DOE recommendations, but I mean, there are some other things that we all, when we look more into this, we should keep in mind. Obviously, fire codes and security. I think we have some limits, Brian, for Homeland Security. They have certain requirements as well, right? Special needs services space and the pre-kindergarten and kindergarten space. Those are all things that we need to keep in mind as we think about growing or what we're going to do going forward. All right, the future. Here we go. This is a really busy graph. So what we did on this one, projected population versus projected enrollment. Even with a statistically weak correlation, this actually looks pretty good to me as a stats person. So we have the existing estimated populations that we've already seen before from the New Hampshire Office of Strategic Initiatives, and what the straight lines are, the solid straight lines, the blue and the gray one, are projection lines. Now the blue one is the projected population for the town of Deerfield. This is a published number from them for 2015, 2020, 2025, and 2030. Could have gone out to 2040, 2035 and 2040, but you get funky when you get out there. You're statistically getting more error built in. So we cut it at 2030, figuring 12 years is a pretty good thing. We feel pretty comfortable with that.
Hold on, that's 12 years from now? Sorry.
Actually, no, it's 11.
All right, go ahead.
11 now. This one goes to 11.
I remember when it was such a small town.
And using the method of the ratio of the enrollment to the population and finding the average of that, and then the standard deviations, we're projected out using that method. We started with 2015 as kind of a checkpoint of actual numbers. And you can see 2015, 503, we're pretty good. So that gray line is the projection of the enrollment going out. So by 2030, according to this model, we could have, we're projected to have 568 students. Now, the dotted and dashed lines are confidence intervals. The light green dashed line is at one standard deviation, or 67%, which means that we expect the actual number to fall within those lines 67% of the time. And the dashed lines, the green ones out on the outside, are the 95% confidence interval, which means we expect the numbers to fall within those lines 95% of the time. So while we're projecting 568, it could be as many as 624. It could be as little as 511 by 2030. Okay, that's one method. If we look at using the building permits, which you should remember, it has a very strong correlation. The model's not as great, but here's why. The state doesn't project building permits, at least not on the town level. So we had to take the ratio between the population and the building permits and do that model to make our own projections about building permits, and then
use that correlation between the enrollment and building permits to make a projection about the enrollment. Not crazy about it because it's a projection of a projection of a projection, and you can see that by the confidence intervals. But here's where it ended up. So we're projected for building permits is pretty flat, right around 20, all the way per year, all the way out to 2030. This gives us a slight increase. It's a little deceiving because of the scale, but starting at 571 in 2015, you can see it's over the actual line. It's a little on the high side, but if we were to, the final results of this model is by 2030, 644, but at the 95% confidence intervals, it could be over 1,000. It could be as little as 190. Huge confidence interval, really kind of shaky statistically. Not crazy about that. However, in talking with my coworkers who are forecasters at the major financial institution and really know their stat stuff, they suggested actually taking an average of the two models to kind of smooth out some of that variability. And here's what the average actually looks like. Now, I didn't bother with the confidence intervals because I've got a pretty good idea what they're going to look like. But I think this is probably the closest to what we're probably going to look like. So 2015, 537. Obviously, it goes up. 2030, we're at 606. So
as you can see, it takes into account, that's why we need both models, the data from both models.
kind of ties it in and smooths each other out. I'm pretty confident with this model that we're going to be in 11 years.
A little over 1% growth.
Yeah.
Student-wise per year.
Correct.
None of your models show negative trends in a big way.
No, that leads us to.
And that was really the kind of, we didn't add, one of the things I meant to add was the projections from the original demographic study. And we knew we were already at their 2040 level.
Exactly.
He used a completely different set of data. He used birth rate and other things, which isn't wrong. It's just, it was different and it didn't.
Is it possible to lay that data in here as well and then average that data with?
I don't know if you'd want to average that data.
Just set it as a second.
It's at the county level. The other thing too was it was at the county level, not at the town level. But it would be worth at least laying over and seeing what that was.
But it supports all of the underlying trends that there are no major decreases.
An uptick.
Right.
So it's just more supporting projections.
Yeah. Any questions about that? No. Brian's already sweating. President's already going, what the heck did I get myself into with this?
So
It's more happy faces.
move on.
Yeah. All right. Yep. Let's talk about recommendations.
That first one, it's pretty clear.
Can't get away from that first one.
Looks like a high rise.
Yeah.
You
We
know?
can always go up.
Looks like Stoke Hall.
We tried to go up. They said you could.
I think
Yeah, that's Stoke.
we just put numbers to what everybody had already assumed. We need more space. The population is not projected to decrease in that time frame that we looked at. So space needs will continue to be a concern. The data in the enrollment projection model should continue to be updated regularly, please, to increase the accuracy and course correct as we go. We can check these. The state will continue to come out with their own corrections, their own projections. So
One thing that if the state went up again and said we're going to change our square footage allotments, it could
That could definitely
be
happen.
out of whack.
So when we had talked about at the last meeting of kind of a phased approach to whatever we decide to do, I think is the right, given this sort of is definitely the right way to what we want to do. which will be, I think our next steps, and again, these are our recommendations, we need to develop a vision for the structure of the school district with the administration and public input. Now, that word district is deliberately put in there because it's not just about the school. It's about how we're going to look. Are we going to become a multi-building district? Are we going to have put on an addition? But it's how we want to look at the two levels. And I think in talking to a bunch of different people and getting some input, the two questions, the two next bullet points keep coming up. Do we want to stay as a K through 8, or do we want to separate the elementary and the middle school? Do we obviously addition to an existing building or a separate building? But that first bullet point, do we want to stay as a K through 8, or do we want to have a separate elementary and middle school? And there's a lot of other effects to both of those. If we stay as a K through 8, obviously we keep one administration, one infrastructure, everything like that. When we separate elementary and middle school, yeah, you have to separate out the infrastructure and everything like that in the administration, but it would also allow the middle school, the junior high school, to develop its own brand. So just putting that out there for you guys to think about that. Its own brand, its own identity, its own thing, its own culture.
So separate set of requirements. If it's a middle school, it has a whole different set of building requirements than if it's a K through 8. That would change a lot.
There's a lot of factors,
But do we want that change? I personally think it would be very much a positive for those grade levels. I think a lot of good would come out of that, but that's my personal opinion.
Part of assessing the spacing is your middle school 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7, 8, because you need to free up enough space in one building or the other, whether you're building an elementary school or you're building a middle school. I mean, there's a lot to think about with that.
Mm-hmm. But that's why we deliberately went with that word district instead of school building. We also have the opportunity right now to address those other needs, which is why I've been reluctant to really push for certain things, because we have town needs. Obviously, we use this as a disaster shelter and homeland security piece. Town's biggest asset for doing that. We keep hearing about auditorium space, where we could have a nice auditorium, save wear and tear on the gym, a nice place for that. Something to put out there. Curriculum and enhancement, STEMs, green space, industrial arts, that keeps coming up as well. And that's, I think, becoming, there's more interest being generated in that. Plant and site improvements, athletic fields, the roof, energy efficiency, traffic patterns, fix the traffic patterns. And then we make that design based on that prioritized list of needs that we've already started on. But if we take a look at what we're doing here, we can cluster a lot of those priorities together and go with that phased approach. That's it. Thank you. Last slide.
That's it.
Any questions?
Thanks for your work.
Yeah.
It's really nice to see a nice model. Go ahead.
This is more of a sort of a bigger level question, I guess. Do you see, as a committee, is your work done, or is this part of the same committee? And this is maybe a board question. Like, is that what we expected, or now do we need to take the same committee and start to answer some of these questions? What's next for us?
I would say our job, as defined by those mission statements, is done. I think at this point we need to make some decisions first before we bring on another committee to take on the task of what that looks like. So we need to talk about that, what that vision of that school district look like,
And once we make that, get some idea about that, and then we can say, well, okay, if we're going to do this, then we're going to take this approach to other things, and then we can definitely create other committees to finalize those details. But I think for the most part, we accomplished what.
The mission statement.
Yeah, and I think we're good. Do you guys feel like any data was lacking other than the original
Demo report.
Right.
report
And I,
results?
do you have the references to where you found the data sets and?
That's part of the documentation that I need to develop
Okay.
before putting this out on the website. I want it to have it
Cite your
all
sources and all that.
Yeah,
all
we'll cite
sourced
the
and,
sources.
and tidied up before going, but we wanted to present this first.
No, that's great. It, yeah, so realistically, we're probably looking around 600 kids at 2030, 11 years.
Versus a capacity.
It's getting smaller.
What's the capacity? 396 without the modules? Is that what it was?
393.
393 according to DOE.
So the next step
We're
is
only 50% over. I mean, that's basically what that is. It's 50%. Yeah.
we need to start having some
Harder conversations.
about where we're gonna ask the town to support.
So
building.
maybe and I'm going to jump out there, but a course of action for us. And obviously we have a window, basically a 12-month window of time to come to this. But I think we should look at if we're going to start to pursue eventually expansion, we need to answer those questions. And then I think next year we will possibly look at seeking some engineering money through a warrant article. And this is for figuring out actual costs and a rough set of plans and site engineering and all that, civil engineering stuff. And I think we started looking at that, and so we spend some time over the spring and fall developing an analysis for costs so that we can present a warrant article for next year. Not for construction, but for the planning side of the equation. If we answer those questions, maybe those are board level questions, we just sit down and we start answering, bringing in the rest of it. But if we answer those questions and it leads us down that path, then I think the next course of action from there is seeking engineering funds.
To answer those questions may require a committee to look into things like other towns in the state that have gone from a K to 8 to a multi-school, and what kinds of changes does that bring and cost and to make that. You're right. We can't really put something out on the warrant next year for an engineering commission unless we got a plan of what we want to do, and that plan has to be deliberate and
Yeah, I mean,
based on looking a lot. I mean, that's a big decision to decide to just add another school versus just making an addition. That's
100% agree.
so that's going to take a lot of work.
I mean, to meet the needs, just based on projections, if we're 50% over capacity, we need to increase footprint by 50%, we need 35,000 square feet of additional space, 40,000 square feet of additional space.
I don't know if that fits on our lot currently.
We'd have to look at the engineering report, through a couple of course options out for us as far as expansion here goes, and I thought we could pull I thought they said we could increase by about 50% footprint wise.
I thought so too.
That way. So, that is something we need to investigate. But we need to have a pretty thorough answer to those questions, obviously, as we progress through that. But for us to be able to sufficiently plan for a potential warrant article, we need to be working on it through the summer so that we know where we're going to be in November.
So why don't we put it on the agenda for the next meeting that we will discuss next steps in regards to needs. Okay. Everybody good with that? Yeah. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Ken. All right. School calendar.
So Brian has continued, and Kristen, to work with staff talking about options for school calendar, and one of the consistent topics that's come up is parent conferences and how we do them and when we do them. And Brian had talked to the faculty about, how could we maybe set aside a chunk of time to do that, and where would we do that, and how would we do that. So we're not necessarily ready to vote on the calendar tonight, but Brian wanted to share the latest conversation and see if we would be in favor of the conference.
Yeah, so the idea right now, parent-teacher conferences are done scattered throughout the whole year, and teachers give up their own time. So they are held in the morning, they're held during the day, and they're held in the evening, at all grade levels. For instance, we had 6th grade in here tonight and tomorrow night, from noon till 7 o'clock at night. So this has been a topic of conversation since I started. And so Kristen and I put this kind of at the top of our agenda this year as our first year working together. So Zach will like to hear this. The proposal that after meeting with the committee was to get rid of 2 early release days, which would leave the only early release day being the last day of school, and take an entire day and do conferences starting in the morning and going into the evening to accommodate all families' needs. And obviously it won't be enough for middle school, given 7-8 having over 100 students, but it would create that buffer of not having to be here 3 to 4 nights a week, if that's how they were gonna do it. So the proposal is again to lose the early release on October 10th and January 24th, and make a conference day on November 5th, which is voting day next year. The decision for the November date is kind of I guess just a meeting ground between the middle school and the elementary school. Elementary teachers like to have their conferences mid to late October, and middle school likes to have theirs after the first trimester, December into January. So November was kind of like the middle ground to have this. And we went back and forth on what days. Do we have it the day after Veterans Day or the Friday before Veterans Weekend? And then we looked at voting day. Most schools in the area have it off. Deerfield never has it off just because we don't use the school as a voting place. But we figured the 5th would be the best option for all, and to see what you guys thought of this.
I can go home.
Go ahead, gloat.
I like where you're going with this.
Thank you. I thought you might.
Couple of questions.
Yes.
So this calendar, is this taking into account the passage or non-passage of the
This is taking
warrant article for the
taking
contract?
into the passage of the contract.
So this is assuming that this is assuming an hours-based schedule.
Correct.
We have 179 days on here, so if the contract failed for some reason, we
Add
would
the
just
days.
add a day.
Plus or
And
minus.
then we'd have to add snow days at the end.
Okay, all right, so that's my first question. Is one conference in November sufficient based upon the Nelms report, I think,
Called for more.
called for more. So should we be looking for like a day in November and a day in April or
Yeah, we should, that was one of the discussions. Again, this was more of a kind of a buffer, and then teachers still taking on that extra time and dedicating their own hours. The problem with this is right now the last day of school is on a Friday, which if we were to add another day, the last day of school is on a Monday. So if on another calendar year, say Christmas vacation was different or something like that, and it ended on a Wednesday, adding an extra day wouldn't be a problem. But to have families come back for an early release on a Monday is not going to sit well with a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you guys are going to probably get a lot of phone calls
So
about that.
doing it this way, we're keeping our instructional hours, so we're
Right.
you know
Right.
using the hours from the early release day And we had a few extra from our other
I
calculations.
think it's brilliant. It's a great
And
idea.
it's also an idea to, I mean, it's definitely something to look at and to see how it goes and to see the pros and cons of having one day like this and then looking at the calendar for next year, sitting here next year and saying it maybe would benefit to have 2 days. And if it falls on a Wednesday, then extend it to Thursday for the last day of school.
And it certainly doesn't mean that teachers won't meet with parents any other time.
Right.
It just provides for a common day when all the families plan ahead, we have this time, and they schedule conferences.
And the idea with, right now, currently our middle school does Sign Up Genius. It's very efficient, works really well. Elementary teachers kind of do it more sporadically. They'll send home paper copies in Friday folders and things like that. So, but the middle school uses Sign Up Genius and it's very efficient.
In terms of the last day being on Friday, would there be any logic behind just picking some sort of a weekend somewhere and just making it a 3-day weekend? And maybe using it for, I don't know, a teacher workshop day or so, I don't know, maybe that's contractual, but is there, I agree that just coming back on a Monday is, but if you add another day somewhere in the year, and if we're taking away some early releases, then maybe that would make sense to just put in an extra long weekend somewhere. For no other reason, just to get us to the 16th rather than the 15th, so that we can, I don't know.
Oh, okay, I see where you're going.
Then it would be ending on Tuesday rather than on a Monday, which
Yeah, like
might,
do Christmas break 2 more days, something like that.
something like
Right.
that, yeah.
So I guess, I mean, that's ultimately
Alright.
up to you guys to, and I can bring this back to the DEA and they can have that discussion and come to the, and we can get that information to
I mean, the 12th is very early, that would be great to get out that early, but that is earlier than we've gotten out in a long time, so.
That's
Yeah,
part of
but
it.
then what about
That's
school?
why.
I know, so I don't know that,
This has a built-in 5 days of snow with the
So
hours.
I was just
I
gonna
mean,
ask.
and you had
that,
to
so.
count for, last year we had 8 days. So
Yeah,
the
so I
12th
mean,
might not be the last day.
So
quite
might not, it
possibly
would
the
be
12th
right,
is
I
the
guess that's true.
17th or,
Might be the
or
17th.
whatever, even
Right.
with the 5 days built in, it's just, it's not the 19th,
Right.
right?
Mhm. If we have 10 snow days, then
Yeah,
we're all in trouble.
yeah, I mean, I like the direction it's going in. I most certainly, I like the dedicated conference time. I think that just, I think the only thing I'd love to see is just, the Nelms report really kind of made it clear that we wanted to see more. And so I kind of want to see, more. If we know that there's going to be a second conference time, done kind of the more, we'll call it the traditional way that we've done it. But, I mean, that would be I really want to see us start executing on some of those. Those are easy things to execute on,
I mean, if that's something, again, like, we could do Nate's idea and extend another, push it out to the following week, have another conference day and add a day somewhere else in the calendar and have the last day of school be the 16th. So, or the 17th. I mean, like you said, that's still early for
We're normally,
schools in the Northeast.
historically, we're normally like the 20-something, right?
Usually around, I'd say like the late teens, early 20s. Seems to be about since I've been here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think back for the,
Yeah.
5 years I've had kids here, it seems like it's always sometime in that window.
I think this is definitely a step in the right direction and definitely interesting, and we aren't going to vote on it tonight anyway. We're going to chew on it. I think there might be some other interesting ways to address the additional parent-teacher conference, but I like the idea. So, any questions or? All right, we will move on from there. Do we want to do board goals review? Check in where we are. Everybody got this? My policies,
Maybe you want to work off?
there they are. All right, so curriculum competency-based education is our first one. Communication, second. Physical plant, long-term planning. Just kind of a quick overview, see where we're at. Curriculum competency-based education, determine current status of differentiation at DCS by collecting data. So they're monitoring the new math program. I think we had talked about having the math folks come back sometime in March or something for a review of Eureka. Is there any feedback in regards to how that's going at this point, or what are people thinking?
We're in the middle of benchmarking right now, so we're excited to see the results. We did spend some time today at leadership retreat looking at some data that's been collected since 2014. We saw some positive growth in just the students that piloted the program last year.
Fourth grade.
So at the
Current
end of
fourth
the
or
The
the
current fifth.
current fifth?
yeah,
Right, so we had the
They're
SAS
in their
scores.
second year of it now, right?
And
they
then
are now
Yes,
this year,
correct.
yep,
So they had the SAS scores from last year,
last spring.
and there was, I guess, decrease in level one being the lowest, everything else shifting up.
is there a way to,
But again, it's only 1 year, it's a
Yeah,
small
right.
sample, and before that, our data is from SBAC, so given that the tests are kind of similar, but not exactly, so it's kind of,
can we look at like benchmarking against, we still do these STAR
Mhm.
testing, so can we
that's
bench,
what we're just doing right now,
you're doing that right now?
correct?
So once that data is available, can we get a presentation of some sort of how we're benchmarking? Be nice to even look at the kids that have piloted, say look at like the 3-year kids, prior pilot year, current, and then maybe a couple of other groups that are, this is year one for 'em, and just see if we're seeing a positive upswing.
Absolutely.
All right. Monitor fifth grade flexible grouping model. Teacher and parent feedback, student scores from fourth to fifth.
That's gone away, hasn't it?
Sort of,
That was the
Second bullet point under A.
yep, we talked,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
it's
full-
The fifth grade flexible grouping.
we talked to Heidi, as per request. I'm trying to remember last week.
Yeah, it was last week. I don't think, it's just one of those topics I think it's a bigger conversation than just, it's gonna take some time, and we've talked about that. It's a mind shift set. And how are we gonna look at, what's the public want, so I think it's more of even looking into doing some surveys for parents, seeing if they want, because you're essentially looking at blending at 5, 6, and making it in middle school. So there's pros and cons to all that. The teachers see pros and cons as well, and the public's going to see pros and cons. So I think there's a little bit more work on our end to do for that.
Was there negative feedback from parents that you were hearing about when you were trying it?
There's concerns about them being considered middle schoolers. Hearing from other schools who have fifth grade as part of their middle school, people say, again, kids are resilient, they'll just do it, and so, but then there's concerns about, the independence of the kids, and just all of a sudden going from, like, right now we have that buffer of the kids are mixed for IAs, but then you're just cutting it off from fourth grade right into a middle school mentality, so, and then you're also looking at space again too. You're looking at lockers, you're looking at classrooms, redesigning who's out in the mods. You would have to put fourth graders out in the mods, and there's concerns about that too. So there's always been one class of fourth graders. Last year there was fourth graders out there, and they seem to do fine. But again, there's parents' concerns about their children being outside and having to walk inside to use the bathrooms, things of that nature.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but that program was more about within the fifth grade itself, that the teachers were going to break down particularly focused on math, the kids' abilities and move the kids between the individual classrooms, right? So it wasn't really combining fourth and fifth, it was more like moving them around within fifth, right?
Right, yeah.
So that ended, and it was one of our goals, and so I'm curious why it ended, and like get a clear picture why it ended.
they're still doing flexible grouping, but they're not switching classes. I think that's what
Correct.
was the final conversation we had.
Yeah, and part of that, it was the Miss Tattlis's group, they looped up with her. So that was a piece of the puzzle too. All of a sudden you're taking the idea of looping and you're throwing in a whole other piece and disrupting that whole balance of the community. So that was a big factor of why they did not want to change and do flexible groupings outside their own.
Was it the teachers who just said no to doing it? Or?
I think of a fourth grade teacher that looped to fifth grade. It was a model she used in fourth grade, and then when she got to fifth grade, she talked to the other fifth grade teachers about this model, and I think that was the conversation that more than and they liked that model. Switching classes. I'm trying to remember if that was talked about.
The switching idea came from Mr. Smith from last year.
Right.
So after he left,
Oh yes.
it kind of took onto the back burner, and with the new administration, it was just not pushed through.
Okay.
And other factors at play when hiring the principal.
Right.
So.
Do you have anything else you want to add on that? Okay. Identify current state of learner-centered classrooms as middle school level, number of opportunities for student directed. So, I mean, this is kind of referencing a lot of the NELM stuff. I know we talked a little bit, and it's already 9:15, so I'm not gonna beat this much hard. We talked a little bit about the NELMs last time. Do you have kind of an update on where we're at?
We had no school last Wednesday. It was a snow day, so the work that we were supposed to do which would have helped me with a report for you. This week we did CFG, Critical Friends Group. So last week's agenda is next week's agenda.
Okay.
So I'll have one at the February board.
Next meeting? Perfect. Fine way, all right, communication. School board, we do need to increase our contact with Concord School Board. School community.
With budget season behind us, I might be able to do that once in a while.
Yeah, and
I could start going to the board meetings. I mean,
right,
not a lot of them, maybe one or two.
I'm gonna go to school community, maintain parent forums. We haven't had a parent forum in a while. Consider video series for parents to view when it is convenient. I think that's something maybe we talk about next time.
Yeah.
Before we go too much further, I'm getting the sense that we are entirely cooked here. How in depth do we want to drive this tonight, guys?
On the next agenda.
I think that's probably better.
Yeah, let's move this to the next.
Let's move this on.
Can I ask a quick question about the calendar? Looking at different dates and things, would you like me to go back to the union and ask for some suggestions on what they think, and we can discuss it for next meeting?
Yeah, I think that.
Do we support the elimination of the half days, or?
I don't mind eliminating half days, and I think you heard from a couple of board members that multiple teacher-parent conferences, if there's some way to work that in.
I just wanted to make sure you're all right with a few proposals for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thanks.
All right.
So we're tabling H, ultimately we're tabling the rest of H?
Yeah.
Okay.
Does the PTO want to say anything?
You guys were there last week. I mean, I could.
Do you want me to do it?
If we come to your meetings, we can save you from having to sit through this.
Having fun. I did right.
Something wrong with you.
We went over our new fundraiser, not finalized plans, but definitely went further into it. We will collect the Square One Art fundraiser for the art teachers. That's one that we split between the art department and us. Planned our candidates night, which is February 19th at 6:30 in the cafeteria this year. Eric Rose will moderate it, and Cheryl Brown is doing some time introductions and questions and answers, which might be nice.
February 19th, is that what you said?
Yes,
Okay.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, February 19th.
I already spoke to the IT person here at the school, so we will get more information on our PTO website, on the new school website. And I'm still planning the triathlon, which the next meeting is February 12th at 7 p.m. Smiles.
Send me a message.
Yes.
That's it.
I have a side question. How do I get a really cool long sleeve Deerfield Dragon shirt? I should know this.
Things to go out, or maybe you need an 8th grader. There's a school spirit
He
show.
will,
I'll see
eventually.
what I can do.
I'll buy one. You
Okay,
just let me know how much.
got it.
Yes, that was quite an aside. There was no executive board meeting.
Next week.
Principals report.
That came quickly.
We're moving now.
I know you are, so I'll move to. The Emergency Operation Planning Committee got together on Tuesday, January 8th. We met with Denny from the town to hash out roles and responsibilities in preparation for some tabletop exercises that we're doing in February and March. The February tabletop exercise will focus on a bomb threat gone bad, and then the March tabletop will be an intruder of some sort that's come into the building. Our big focus on the tabletop exercise will be on evacuation and reunification, work through that whole process with the team. The roles and responsibilities that we laid out were all of the officers that would need to be working alongside with the incident commander, which will most likely be the fire chief, or the police chief, whatever the situation is. This is getting us ready for spring evacuation. So we are actually going to evacuate the kids to the offsite locations this spring, with a huge focus on the evacuation portion and the reunification portion, so we can practice that and role play it. There will be somebody here from Homeland Security on both the February 1 and the March tabletop exercise, and the March tabletop exercise with the intruder will have an additional Homeland Security representative who has done specific intruder work with schools all over the country. So he's coming to work us through that process. Any questions about that?
I have kind of a tangential question. If there are parents that are not interested in their kids participating in those drills, are they notified ahead of time and offered the opportunity to keep their kids out of them?
You mean when we do the offsite evacuation?
Right.
What's been past practice?
I don't think
I don't
so.
think so. I
No.
don't think it's the same as, similar to what we do for fire drill. We don't, I mean,
We'll
obviously
notify the
we'll notify
community
and
ourselves.
things
This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm just thinking of like some of the actors. I don't know exactly how the Alice stuff works and the active shooter stuff.
But you're not acting that out. You're just
We're not.
evacuating the building.
We're just
It's
practicing
Yeah,
evacuating.
yeah.
It's a bigger fire drill
Right.
to a certain extent.
Exactly.
Offsite.
It's an offsite fire drill.
And then we'll come back. We would go through the reunification process, but we'll be coming back to school.
Okay.
We're not having parents come and pick up their kids, unless it were a real emergency.
Right.
Thank you. And that's part of our 2-year cycle. We do that every 2 years, the offsite.
That's what we've heard is a bus evacuation in the past, correct? That's
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
evacuation.
that's
Okay, or that drill.
We have a Girls on the Run crew. Sarah Jane Chaplin approached me back in, I guess, November or so. The Girls on the Run has run out of the Parks and Rec, and they would like to use the outside facilities here. So I talked to Cindy Hansen, and they're excited to come and run on at DCS. We can include more girls that way. It's going to be starting in March on Mondays and Thursdays. There'll be 2 teams, about 30 girls from 3 to 4:30, and they'll mostly use the outside space. If they need an inside space, we can accommodate them. They don't need a big, huge spot. Our robotics club will be attending a competition on January 27th. It's at Oyster River. I believe up until this point that they're not quite ready to compete, but they're going to get ideas. That's what I was told by a student, that sometimes we get good ideas so that they'll be ready in April to compete. Brian will talk to you about the Core and More. We had our student council came up with a great idea that I think has been tried in the past, but they would like to see. There was some student voice in this Core and More that's about to start in another week or 2.
Yeah, so our student government, for our 4 members, probably the most productive and driven student body I've seen since I've been here. And they've come up with some fantastic ideas. And so some of them are kind of grand and not, they just can't be obtained, but they're excellent. But the one that they did present was kind of changing up how we do Core More. Currently, Core More is a time to have students who are on level 2 get intervention, and the rest of the student body goes to math, reading, writing, or a statistics course, and including as well as music. If they're in band, they're going to the band. So the presentation by the student government was to allow students to choose their own options, with the idea that everything is a lab, and not your traditional like science lab, but not like dissecting, but actually almost similar to a study, but with direct instruction and guidance, like essentially a tutor from the teacher. So they gave us some ideas of what they were looking for, and so working with the 7-8 team, we came up with a new plan to kind of honor their request, and so we will be starting this next week. Students have the options of 5 choices, and with teacher guidance, we will be kind of directing them to what lab they're going to take, and this will be a 4-week process, so in 4 weeks, we'll do it again. Kids can't sign up for the same lab twice, so if I sign up for the science lab with Ms. Hughes, the next time I have to take math or world language or the writing or reading. The only thing that's going to stay from the previous one is the music, because that was a dedicated year-long program. So anybody who's in woodwinds next will have the whole entire quarter with Mrs. Davis. So, but it's kind of similar to what we used to do in the past, but this is all more academic based. When I first started Core, kind of what Core More started off as was a choice based. So they could do art and they could do things of that nature, and but less academics. This is all academically driven.
This would be more like enrichment stuff, where it's sort of not like taking their math stuff, but more some sort of extension above and beyond, or is it more sort of remediation or sort of help with what they're already
a little
working
bit
on in
of
class?
both columns. We have kids who will go there for remediation to work on. If I sign up for the math, say I need extra support in math, so they have the opportunity to do that, but they also have the opportunity to work with Mr. Dudley and going beyond and striving for the level 4 type work. Same thing with, we've actually offered, one of the questions on the survey was if you're interested in tutoring. So having the option to do some peer-to-peer tutoring. Again, that'll be handpicked by the teachers. You know, Mr. Dudley's not going to let someone who doesn't know algebra try to, have a tutor someone who's doing algebra. So, it's a little bit of both on both grounds. So we're looking forward to seeing how it works. And this is all buy-in from the kids. The student government reps went around and spoke to kids, and they had meetings and things of that nature. So there's definitely student-driven, and looking forward to seeing their voices heard and seeing what they can do. So that's pretty neat. Great. So. Oh, and another thing that they came to us our current eighth graders, they went out to the Concord field trip to see the high school. And our line here with the middle schoolers is that we're always preparing them for high school. 2 boys came back and they said they've noticed that everybody in Concord can wear hats. So they asked if they could start wearing hats. They actually had a presentation and everything put together. They did a fantastic job. They polled all the teachers as well, all the middle school staff, and then they came to us with all their data, and we found a compromise of 1 day a week, given that there was no more vandalism in the school, things of that nature, and they have lived up to their end of the deal, and so this Friday will be the first time that students at only middle school 608 can wear hats in the building. Great. So, and as a teacher's discretion, so if they go into the room and teachers doesn't want hats, the students know that they have to take them off. So, and again, that was through student government, through these other 2 boys, that they went this direction. So it's pretty neat.
Good.
I mentioned that we're in the middle of benchmarking grades K to 8, so we're looking forward to going through that data. And lastly, Brian, Lisa McConnell, and I spent the day in Pembroke at the Pembroke Town Library. The district held a leadership retreat for the entire SAU 53 leadership team, assistant principals, principals, athletic directors, special ed coordinators from all over the district, and it was a wonderful day to get together and be with like-minded people. So that was planned back in the summertime. We planned for a mid-year retreat, and here we are, mid-year. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Awesome. Curriculum review.
Didn't meet.
Okay, space needs we can skip. You guys already gone. Staff report we've done. MBC.
Quick one, we have, the MBC has concluded its work on the town and the schools budgets. The schools budget passed the MBC with no modifications. So it is now on the warrant for deliberative. Other, obviously, large item was the teacher's contract. That was recommended by the MBC with an 8-1 vote for recommendation as well. The other warrant articles passed or were recommended. I believe those two were unanimous.
I think so.
So it would have been a 9-0. But the budget process this year went very smoothly, and actually went. This was the best year for our budget as far as just processing that I've seen since I've been on the board. So
Yeah, nice job.
yeah.
Thank you. Amber too. Amber,
Yeah, I mean, we really.
we had a ton of information and it was timely, and I think that was appreciated.
Yep. No, and
Super.
Mm-hmm.
so
Absolutely.
thank you to the administration as well, obviously.
All right, policies. I would entertain a motion to table the policies.
So moved.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Informational items.
I have a few, but I think we're probably going to be happy to hear them later. One was that Jim and I went to Co-Brown last week. Do we want to talk about that or wait on that one?
Talk about it next time?
You have some non-public stuff tonight, so
Okay.
letting you know that now.
Yeah. So, it was a nice visit. We'll give you more details later. Anything else?
I had a second one, and
It's a
that
Northwood.
was I had a third one, but I'll wait on that one too. So the second one was about. It also stems from the from what I mentioned earlier about a job description and how this kind of reporting for the board gets me sucked into Facebook stuff, and so it's not a healthy thing. But can you pass one of these down, please? Take one and pass it. There was sort of a series of questions. I try not to pay too much attention to it, but when it keeps dinging up on my phone, so I got to change my notifications. But anyway, this was a question that I kind of wrestled with before responding, and I didn't want to respond on Facebook. It's not the forum for it. But before I did respond, and I think really a more appropriate way would be for the board to respond. So I wanted to float this idea to you, the board, and get a sense of where we stand maybe as a board, and maybe this is more of a question to the chair, whether this is appropriate or not.
I mean, this is kind of what we talk about this regularly, about what the role of the board is and how it fits and the appropriate approach that the board should have with interacting with the administration and the teachers and the budget and everything.
So, and I agree with that, but I don't know whether we, the board, are all on board with this philosophy. I don't know. Is it worth?
Do you want to read it out loud?
I'll read it, sure.
Okay.
There have been questions recently about the validity of the school board maintaining a 30,000-foot perspective on DCS operations. In the case of this board, 30,000 feet is not synonymous with autopilot, as some in the community charge. Instead, the board in recent years has made hiring good employees a priority, then worked to provide them with direction, and stepped back to let them do the job they were hired to do. Direction from the board comes in the form of policies that we set and annual goals that we revisit regularly. When necessary, additional guidance and clarity are provided. And when the board is unclear of the direction to take, we gather information from the community. In this way, the wishes of the community are represented to the professionals in the building, and the needs and demands of educating our kids are balanced against the costs associated with it.
I think that's well stated.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do we agree on this, or I guess that's the question?
Yeah, I 100% agree. So.
Okay. Then I might say something to that effect on.
You could
The
put it
old
in one of your.
Facebook?
You want to put it in one of your posts?
Sure, I'll put that
for
up
one
there.
of your commentless posts.
My commentless ones, yeah. That'll be be commentless from now on. Yes. That was it.
All right. Public comments.
We're out.
Have a good night.
Thanks for the cookies.
Thank you for the cookies.
Yes, thank you.
So good.
They turned off the lights in the hallway.
Janitors have gone home.
All right. We do have non-public again? As per
So moved.
RSA 91-A:3 2C, I would entertain a motion to go to non-public.
So moved.
Second.
Ken?
Yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
Yes.
Jim, yes. Zach?
Yes.
Nate? Cookie?
Yes. Oh, I don't know.
So bad.
9:48, we are out of non-public.
Move to seal the minutes of the non-public.
Second.
All in favor?
I move to approve the staff request.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move.
Appointments and resignations?
No.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
9:50, we are done.